It all started on a Tuesday morning when my own children walked into my office and told me I was finished. Not retired. Finished. Like an old piece of furniture they'd decided to throw out. I sat there behind the mahogany desk I'd occupied for 37 years, staring at the faces of Daniel, my eldest son, and Rebecca, my daughter, and I couldn't quite process what they were saying. The words came at me like bullets. Early retirement, pension, transfer, family business restructuring, immediate effect. "Dad, you are 62, Daniel said, his voice carrying that corporate smoothness he'd learned at business school. "You've worked hard. You deserve to rest. We'll take care of everything," Rebecca added, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "The business, your finances, all of it. You just need to sign these papers." I looked down at the documents they'd spread across my desk like a feast they were expecting me to devour without question. Retirement papers, pension transfer agreements, power of attorney forms. My hands trembled as I picked up the first page, my reading glasses sliding down my nose. "What is this really about?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "It is about family," Daniel replied. "It is about securing everyone's future." That should have been my first warning. When someone tells you something is about family, it usually means it is about money. I'd built Montgomery Construction from nothing, started with a pickup truck, a toolbox, and a dream back in 1986. My wife, Patricia, God rest her soul, had stood by me through every struggle, every late night, every financial scare. We'd raised 3 children, Daniel, Rebecca, and Marcus, in a modest house that we slowly expanded as the business grew. By the time Patricia passed 5 years ago from breast cancer, Montgomery Construction employed over 200 people and had contracts across 3 states. The cancer had devastated us, not just emotionally, though that pain was profound, but financially too. Patricia's treatment had been aggressive, experimental, and expensive. Insurance covered some, but not all. I'd dipped into company funds, taken loans, mortgaged properties, but I'd do it all again if it meant one more day with her. When she died, something in me died too. The fire that had driven me to build this empire dimmed to barely glowing embers. That is when my children stepped up, or so I thought. Daniel had joined the company at 25, fresh from his MBA. He was sharp, ambitious, everything I'd hoped he'd be. Rebecca came aboard 2 years later, handling human resources and operations. Marcus, my youngest, had always been different, creative, sensitive, uninterested in construction. He'd moved to California to pursue photography, and we talked maybe once a month. Daniel and Rebecca assured me Marcus was taken care of in all family financial arrangements, though he never seemed to need much. After Patricia's death, I'd leaned on Daniel and Rebecca more heavily. They'd taken over day-to-day operations while I worked through my grief. I still came to the office, still signed off on major decisions, but truthfully, I was coasting. The business that had once been my passion had become just a place I went to avoid the empty house. "I need time to think about this," I told them that Tuesday morning. "Dad," Rebecca's voice took on an edge, "we've already discussed this with the board. Everyone agrees it is time." "The board I appointed?" "The board that cares about this company's future," Daniel corrected. "Look, we're not trying to push you out. We're trying to help you enjoy your golden years. You've got your pension. You'll never want for anything. Let us handle the stress." Something in his tone made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. But I was tired, so tired, and maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to step away, to travel, to do all the things Patricia and I had planned but never got around to. "I'll think about it," I repeated. They weren't happy, but they left. I sat alone in my office as the sun tracked across the floor, illuminating dust motes that danced in the light. My office overlooked the construction yard where dozers and excavators sat in neat rows, where the trucks bearing my name rumbled in and out. My legacy, or what I thought was my legacy. That evening, I called Marcus in California. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Dad, everything okay? Your brother and sister want me to retire." Silence. "Then, what do you mean?" I explained the meeting, the papers, the pressure. Marcus listened without interrupting, which wasn't like him. Usually he'd jump in with questions, with his artist's perspective on everything. "What do you think?" I asked when I finished. "Dad, I think." He paused, and I heard him take a breath. "I think you should be careful. Daniel called me last month asking about my share of the inheritance, what I'd be willing to accept if certain changes were made to the business structure." "What kind of changes?" "He wouldn't say, said it was all hypothetical." "But Dad," he was pushing hard, Wanted to know if I'd sign off on things without you being involved in the discussions. My stomach dropped. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell. Marcus's voice hardened. This is your company. Whatever you decide I support, but don't let them bully you into anything. After we hung up, I sat in Patricia's favorite chair, the one I'd kept in the corner of the living room because it still smelled faintly of her perfume. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, but I was so tired of fighting, tired of thinking, tired of carrying the weight of everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel and Rebecca increased the pressure. They'd show up at my house with the papers. They'd corner me at the office. They'd bring up Patricia, how she'd want me to rest, to take care of myself. They'd paint pictures of me on a beach somewhere, fishing, golfing, doing all the things retired people supposedly did. Your pension is fully vested, Rebecca explained during one visit. $45,000 a month for life. That is more than most people make in a year. Dad, you'll be comfortable. And the company will be in good hands, Daniel assured me. We've already got plans to expand, to take Montgomery Construction to the next level. This is what you built it for, isn't it? To pass on to us? They made it sound so reasonable, and maybe it was. Maybe I was just a stubborn old man clinging to something that no longer needed him. I signed the papers on a Friday afternoon in late September. Daniel and Rebecca were there, along with the company lawyer, Howard Chen, who'd worked with us for 20 years. Howard walked me through each document, his voice steady and professional, but I noticed he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Howard, this is all legitimate, I asked. Everything is in order, Richard, he replied. Your pension is secured, your health insurance continues, and you retain a seat on the board as chairman emeritus, which means you can attend meetings and offer advice, but you don't have voting power. So I'd be a figurehead, a ghost haunting the company I'd built. But Daniel and Rebecca stood there, smiling, and I was so tired, and maybe this was just how things worked. Maybe this was what succession looked like. I signed. They took me to dinner that night at the steakhouse where we'd celebrated every major contract, every milestone. They ordered champagne, toasted my career, told stories about growing up in a construction family. For a few hours, it felt like we were actually a family again, connected by something more than blood and obligation. But when Daniel dropped me off at home, he said something that stuck with me. Dad, you should think about traveling, getting out of town for a while. Clear your head. Maybe, I replied. No, really. Take that trip to Ireland you and Mom always talked about. We'll handle everything here. You don't need to worry. The way he said it, like he was trying to get rid of me, made that uneasy feeling return. The first pension payment hit my account in October, $45,000, just as promised. I stared at the number on my computer screen, and it felt surreal. I'd never not worked. Even on vacation, I'd been on call, checking in, solving problems. Now, suddenly, I had nothing but time. I didn't go to Ireland. Instead, I started going to the office. Not every day, and not to work, but just to be around the business. Daniel had taken my old office, which stung more than I wanted to admit, so I'd sit in the break room or walk through the yard, talking to the workers who'd been with me for decades. That is when I started noticing things. Small things at first. Jorge, my yard for 20 years, mentioned that they'd let go of half the maintenance crew. Said they were streamlining operations, Jorge told me, shaking his head. Good men with families just gone. Did Daniel discuss this with the board? Jorge shrugged. Above my pay grade, boss. I mean, Richard, sorry, habit. It is fine, Jorge. I'll always be the boss to you. But I wasn't, not anymore. I noticed other changes. New luxury cars in the executive parking spaces. The company logo had been redesigned, sleeker and more modern, which was fine, except nobody had consulted me. The break room that used to have coffee and donuts now had an espresso machine that required a code to access. Only management, a young worker told me when I tried to use it. He didn't recognize me. Then there were the new contracts. I heard about them through the grapevine, massive projects, government buildings, infrastructure work. The kind of contracts that should have required board approval, but I wasn't receiving board meeting notifications anymore. I called Howard Chen. Howard, when's the next board meeting? Richard, how is retirement treating you? When's the next meeting? A pause. I'd have to check the schedule. Howard, I am chairman emeritus. I should be notified. Of course. I'll send you the information. He never did. In November, my pension payment didn't arrive. I checked my account multiple times, called the bank, checked again. Nothing. I called the company's finance department and got transferred 4 times before reaching a woman who introduced herself as the new comptroller. Mr. Montgomery, I show here that your pension is under review. Under review? Why? I don't have those details. You'd need to speak with Mr. Montgomery. I am Mr. Montgomery. I mean Daniel Montgomery, sir. I know what you meant. I tried calling Daniel. He didn't answer. I tried Rebecca. Same result. I drove to the office, but the security guard Simone, I didn't recognize, wouldn't let me pass the lobby without an appointment. I built this company, I told him. I am sorry, sir, but those are my instructions. I stood there in the lobby of my own company watching people walk past who didn't know me and felt the full weight of what I'd allowed to happen. I'd been pushed out completely and totally that night. I called Marcus. They're not paying my pension. What? I explained everything. The missed payment, the blocked calls, the security guard. Marcus listened, and I could hear the anger building in his voice. Dad, you need a lawyer, not Howard, someone independent. It is probably just a mistake. Dad, stop, please stop making excuses for them. They pushed you out, and now they're cutting you off. This is theft. They're my children. Then they should act like it. Marcus gave me the name of an attorney in San Francisco who specialized in corporate law, a woman named Victoria Drake. I called her the next morning and explained the situation. She listened carefully, asking pointed questions about the documents I'd signed, the circumstances of my retirement, the company structure. Mr. Montgomery, I need to see everything. All your paperwork, corporate documents, financial records, everything you can get your hands on. I don't have access anymore. You are a shareholder, correct? I own 40% of the company. Then you have rights. I am going to send you a formal request for corporate records. As a significant shareholder, they're legally required to provide them. That formal request, delivered by courier to the company headquarters, was like throwing a match into gasoline. Within hours, Daniel called me. Dad, what the hell are you doing? I want my pension payment. There is a delay in processing. It'll be resolved. Then resolve it. And I want access to corporate records. Why, you don't trust us? Should I? Silence then. Dad, you are making this harder than it needs to be. We're family. Then act like family, pay my pension, give me the records. He hung up. The records arrived 2 weeks later, delivered in boxes by a courier who needed my signature. 12 boxes of documents covering the past 5 years of Montgomery Construction's operations. I spread them across my dining room table and started reading. At first, it was overwhelming. Balance sheets, contracts, invoices, tax documents. But I'd run this company for 37 years. I knew how to read these documents, knew what numbers should look like, what patterns to expect. And the patterns were wrong. Expenses that didn't make sense. Payments to subcontractors I'd never heard of. Contracts with prices that seemed inflated. I cross-referenced company records with what I knew about our projects, and nothing matched up. I called Victoria Drake. I think they're cooking the books. Explain. I spent 2 hours walking her through what I'd found. Phantom subcontractors, inflated material costs, missing equipment, projects that showed huge expenses but minimal progress. The more I dug, the worse it got. Mr. Montgomery, this isn't just bad bookkeeping. This looks like systematic fraud. Fraud, tax fraud. Specifically, if they're reporting false expenses, they're reducing taxable income. The IRS would be very interested in this. My hands shook as I held the phone. My children were criminals. My legacy was built on fraud. What do I do? First, we need to verify everything. I am going to bring in a forensic accountant. Then, depending on what we find, we may need to contact authorities. Authorities, the IRS, Mr. Montgomery, and possibly the FBI if fraud crosses state lines, which given your contracts, it probably does. I spent Christmas alone that year. Marcus flew out to be with me for a few days, but he had commitments back in California. Daniel and Rebecca didn't call, didn't send cards. It was as if I'd ceased to exist. The forensic accountant, a meticulous woman named Dr. Patricia Song, arrived in January. She spent 3 weeks going through the documents with me, creating spreadsheets, tracking money flows, building a timeline of fraud. Mr. Montgomery, she said during one of our sessions, this is extensive. I am estimating they've hidden somewhere between $8 and $12 million in income over 5 years. My head spun. That much. At least. They created shell companies, limited liability corporations with generic names. Those companies would provide services to Montgomery Construction at inflated prices. The money would flow to the shells, then disappear into personal accounts. How did I not see this? You weren't looking, and after your wife's illness you were distracted. They counted on that. Why would they need to steal? The company was profitable. They would inherit everything anyway. Dr. Song looked at me with something like pity. Some people can't wait, or maybe they thought they deserved it now, or maybe they just didn't respect what you built. The pension payment finally arrived in February, but it was for only $15,000. Adjusted for company performance, Daniel explained in a terse email. The full amount isn't sustainable. Except the company performance was fine, better than fine according to the legitimate contracts. They were just stealing my pension to fund their fraud. Victoria Drake filed a lawsuit in March, seeking restoration of my full pension, reinstatement of my corporate access, and a full audit of company finances. The lawsuit laid out the evidence of fraud in careful legal language, but the message was clear. Daniel and Rebecca had been stealing millions. The response was nuclear. Daniel and Rebecca countersued, claiming I was mentally incompetent, that Patricia's death had broken me, that I was imagining conspiracies where none existed. They provided affidavits from company employees saying I'd been erratic, forgetful, paranoid. They painted me as a senile old man clinging to past glory. They're going to fight dirty, Victoria warned. Are you prepared for this? They're my children. They're not acting like it. The court battle consumed the spring. Depositions, document requests, expert testimony. I sat across conference tables from Daniel and Rebecca, and they looked at me with cold eyes, like I was an obstacle to remove, rather than the man who'd raised them. During one particularly brutal deposition, Rebecca's lawyer asked me about my mental state after Patricia's death. You were depressed, weren't you, Mr. Montgomery? My wife died. Of course I was depressed. Did you seek treatment? Why not? I had a business to run. Or were you incapable of running it? Isn't that why you were so willing to retire? I was pressured into retiring. Or were you relieved that your children would take the burden off your shoulders because you couldn't handle it anymore? Victoria objected, but the damage was done. They were building a narrative. Mentally compromised father accuses successful children of fraud because he can't accept his own decline. But we had the numbers, and numbers don't lie. Dr. Song testified about the systematic fraud, walking the court through shell companies, hidden transactions, falsified expenses. She presented evidence that couldn't be explained away. Money flowing out of Montgomery Construction into LLCs controlled by Daniel and Rebecca, then into personal accounts, offshore investments, luxury purchases. This isn't bookkeeping errors, she stated firmly. This is deliberate sustained fraud, designed to evade taxes and enrich the defendants. The judge, a stern woman named Margaret Holloway, listened carefully. She asked pointed questions about the timeline, about my access to information, about when the fraud began. Dr. Song, in your expert opinion, when did this fraudulent activity start? Approximately 6 months after Mrs. Montgomery's death, that is when the first shell company was registered, and it continued through Mr. Montgomery's forced retirement. Yes, Your Honor, and accelerated after he signed the retirement papers. Judge Holloway looked at Daniel and Rebecca. Why would it accelerate? Their lawyer, a slick corporate attorney named Preston Mills, stood. Your Honor, if there was any irregularity, and we dispute that there was, it would be a matter of business judgment, not fraud. My clients were working to save a struggling company after Mr. Montgomery's mental decline left operations in chaos. A struggling company that somehow reported $12 million in false expenses. The judge asked dryly. Preston Mills had no good answer. In June, Judge Holloway issued her preliminary ruling. She ordered Montgomery Construction to immediately restore my full pension, granted me complete access to all corporate records, and appointed an independent auditor to investigate the company's finances. More importantly, she referred the matter to the IRS and the FBI for criminal investigation. The evidence presented suggests systematic fraud, she wrote in her decision. While this court cannot make criminal determinations, the pattern of behavior warrants investigation. by appropriate authorities. The news hit the local papers immediately. Montgomery construction founders accused of tax fraud by father. The construction industry was small, and everyone knew everyone. My phone started ringing, former employees, competitors, clients, all wanting to know what was happening. I told them the truth. My children had pushed me out and stolen my pension to cover their fraud. The IRS investigation began in July. Federal agents arrived at Montgomery Construction with boxes and hard drives. They seized computers, files, everything. The company's operations ground to a halt as employees were interviewed. Documents were copied. Accounts were frozen. Daniel called me once during this period. "Dad, you've destroyed us. I gave you everything, and we built on it. We took your small company and made it an empire. By stealing, by being smart. The tax code is complicated. We found advantages. You found ways to commit fraud. Dad, if you'd just left things alone, everyone would have been fine. You'd have your pension. We'd have the company. Why couldn't you just let go? Because you made me. If you'd treated me with respect, if you'd paid my pension, if you'd been honest, none of this would have happened. So this is revenge. This is justice." He hung up. We never spoke again. The FBI's investigation revealed the full scope of the fraud. 8 years, not 5, $15 million, not 12. Shell companies in 3 states, falsified tax returns, money laundering, bribery of building inspectors to overlook code violations that would have cost millions to correct. Marcus flew out when the arrests happened. We sat together in my living room watching the news coverage of federal agents leading Daniel and Rebecca out of the company headquarters in handcuffs. Daniel looked defiant. Rebecca was crying. "Dad, are you okay?" Marcus asked. I wasn't okay. Watching my children being arrested was like having my heart torn out, but I was certain I did the right thing. "I know you did. Your mother would be ashamed. Mom would be proud. You stood up for what was right." The trial took place over 6 weeks in the fall. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. The shell companies, the false expenses, the tax evasion, the bribery. They called Dr. Song, called IRS agents, called employees who'd been pressured to falsify documents. Daniel and Rebecca's defense was that they'd been following my instructions, that I'd approved everything, and that after my mental decline, they couldn't be held responsible for my decisions. But the timeline destroyed that argument. The fraud started after Patricia died, when I was grieving but still competent. It accelerated after they pushed me out. And the personal enrichment, the luxury cars, the vacation homes, the offshore accounts, couldn't be explained as business decisions. I testified for 2 days. The hardest days of my life. Daniel and Rebecca's lawyer tried to paint me as vengeful, as a bitter old man who couldn't accept his children's success. "Mr. Montgomery, isn't it true that you resented your children's accomplishments?" I was proud of them. "Then why destroy them?" "They destroyed themselves. I just uncovered the truth. You are taking revenge because they forced you into retirement. They forced me into retirement so I wouldn't discover their crimes. There is a difference." In November, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts: tax fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. Daniel received 12 years in federal prison. Rebecca got 10. I sat in the courtroom as the verdicts were read, and I felt nothing, no triumph, no vindication, just emptiness. The judge addressed them before sentencing. "You were given a gift, a successful business built by your father's hard work. Rather than honor that legacy, you chose to exploit it, to steal from the government, and worst of all, to betray the man who gave you everything. Your actions reflect not just criminality but profound moral failure." After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into cold November air. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Marcus appeared at my side, guiding me to his rental car. "Let's go home, Dad." Montgomery Construction survived, barely. The company was placed in receivership, fined heavily by the IRS and restructured. I was offered the chance to return as CEO, but I declined. Jorge, my old yard foreman, took over instead. He'd been with me from nearly the beginning, and he understood what the company was supposed to be. "I'll take care of it, boss," he promised, "the way you would have." "I know you will." I sold my shares to Jorge and a consortium of longtime employees. The money went into a trust for Marcus and for Patricia's favorite charities. I kept enough to live comfortably, but I didn't want the wealth anymore. It was tainted. Marcus moved back from California. He bought a house 3 blocks from mine and visited daily. We'd have coffee, talk about his photography, avoid discussing Daniel and Rebecca. They were ghosts now, memories of children I'd loved who'd turned into strangers. I visited them once in prison. Both of them, separate trips, separate facilities. Rebecca went first. She looked diminished in the orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup. When she saw me through the glass, she started crying. "Daddy, I am sorry. I am so sorry. Why did you do it?" "I don't know. It started small, just taking a little extra here and there. Then it got bigger. And we couldn't stop because stopping meant admitting what we'd done. You could have come to me. We were ashamed, and then we were scared, and then we were too deep. Did you ever love me, or was I just the obstacle?" "I loved you. I love you. I got lost." We talked for another 30 minutes, but it was hollow. The daughter I'd raised was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Daniel refused to see me the first 2 times I visited. The third time, he finally agreed. He looked harder than Rebecca, his jaw set, his eyes cold. "Come to gloat?" he asked. I came to understand. There is nothing to understand. You won, we lost, that is it. Why couldn't you just run the company honestly? Because honest doesn't make you rich, Dad. You built something good, but small. We could have built something great. By stealing? By being strategic? Everyone cheats the IRS. We just got caught. Do you regret it? He laughed bitterly. I regret trusting Howard Chen. He is the one who turned evidence when the feds squeezed him. Your loyal attorney rolled on us to save his own license. Do you regret hurting me? That stopped him. For just a moment the mask slipped and I saw something human underneath. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I regret that. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I am 65 now. 3 years since that Tuesday morning when my world ended. Montgomery Construction is thriving under Jorge's leadership, doing honest work, building things that last. Marcus's photography business is growing. He specializes in architectural photography, which feels fitting somehow. I volunteer at a legal aid clinic, helping people understand their rights when dealing with family businesses and estates. I tell them my story as a warning. Protect yourself, even from those you love. Especially from those you love. Sometimes, I wonder what Patricia would think. Would she blame me for putting our children in prison? Would she say I should have let it go, kept the family together at any cost? But I remember something she told me during her cancer treatment. We'd been discussing experimental therapies, and the doctor had said some of them might give her a few more months but would bankrupt us. "Richard," she'd said, holding my hand, "promise me something. Promise you'll never compromise your integrity for anything or anyone. Not for me, not for the kids, not for the business. Because when everything else is gone, that is all you have." I'd promised. I kept that promise. The lessons I learned were brutal but necessary. Family doesn't mean unconditional trust. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Love has to be earned and maintained, not assumed. I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you sacrificed everything for. I learned that enabling bad behavior out of love just makes the eventual reckoning worse. I learned that sometimes protecting people from consequences does more harm than good. Most importantly, I learned that integrity isn't situational. It doesn't pause for grief or convenience or family loyalty. Doing the right thing often means doing the hard thing, even when it breaks your heart. My children made their choices. I made mine. I chose truth over comfort, justice over family unity, principle over peace. Would I do it differently if I could go back? I ask myself that question often, usually late at night when sleep won't come and the house feels too empty. The answer is no, because the alternative would have been living a lie, accepting theft, allowing my life's work to become a vehicle for crime. That would have dishonored Patricia's memory and everything I'd built. Some prices are too high to pay, even for family. Daniel and Rebecca will be eligible for parole eventually. I don't know if they'll contact me when they're released. I don't know if I'll respond if they do. That is a bridge I'll cross when I come to it. For now, I focus on the things that matter. Marcus's success, the honest work being done under Montgomery Construction's name, the people I help at the legal clinic, the memories of Patricia that sustain me. I built something real once. My children tried to corrupt it. I tore it down rather than let the corruption stand. And from the rubble, something real grew again. That is not a happy ending, but it is an honest one. And after everything, honesty is all I have left.